and welcome to a new episode of League of DFS. We are in week 4 of Summer Split, I believe. Welcome back, all. I hope you all enjoyed a great July 4th for those who are in the United States. For many of you who may just be enjoying Rift Rivals, which happened last week, that was an awesome event, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching these type of fun but also competitive, highly competitive events that takes place. It gives a lot of the teams the break, but it also showcases like the top teams from the spring split. There was a lot of things that we learned, but also a lot of things that are probably not applicable right now when it comes to talking about the LCS. But these are things that you want to pay attention to as we head into the grand event of Worlds, which will happen at the end of Summer Split. You want to pay attention to how some of these teams have faltered, how some of these teams have adapted well to the new meta, as they call it. So without further ado, let's dive in. Today I don't have a guest, so this will be a shorter than normal segment. I will use the time to kind of reflect on what's going on so far in terms of the global events that is taking place. One of the things that we have to pay attention to in North American LCS and European LCS now are roster changes that are happening, mostly from the EU side, from the European side. We're not seeing any return of Reckless in sight. I'm paying attention to what he said, the interview that he gave for Travis Gafford during Rift Rivals was very insightful to kind of see where his mindset is, and will we be able to see Reckless this summer split? It's really up in the air right now, but it really ties well back into when his championship pool is effective again. We're hearing that it might come back as soon as 8.14, which I'm not sure at this time when it'll be implemented. It kind of seems like it might be delayed for another week or so before it's actually back in the LCS stage. But once 8.14 is here, I'm expecting Reckless to take his spot back, because it really does boost up his main champion like Tristana or some of the other marksmen that are available in his championship pool, because he is having a heck of a time trying to adapt to more melee champions, which is more suitable for this meta. But for those who are needing to pay attention to this is the one spot that you need to pay attention to. Once Reckless is back, people might be back to splitting time with SOAS, and it'll be more or less a guessing game as who will be starting at the top. On the other end, as far as EU team are concerned, I think we are still paying attention to Unicorns of Love, Exile, or was it Samex? I think it's Samex. My apologies. Samex, who is dealing with an injury, and they've signed Neon for that in case he needs to sub out. So far, we haven't heard any changes that are being planned, but this is continuing to be something that we need to monitor. But for now, we continue to expect things to go forward as planned. Not a lot of changes there. We're seeing a bit of a bounce back from Splice. They're taking them down. Team Liquid was something that I did not expect, but it was really encouraging to see that Splice is making the adaptation needed, and they are a very fantastic organization. I think they just have a difficulty transitioning to this new style of playing, but they're making small steps in progressing forward, and they have somewhat of a softer matchup going ahead for now until the matchups resets again in about 2 weeks. So for now, I think it's safe to play some Splice, play their champions such as Xerxes, such as Odoamne and Kabe. Those are the 3 main ones that I trust more of. Whether they are playable for this week, we'll see when I do the slate breakdown. But those are some of the teams that you want to pay attention to, as they'll maybe making a comeback. I am unsure of everyone else. We do have a premier matchup that I'll talk about when we do the lineup breakdown. On the North American side, a little bit more excitement going on as far as roster changes is concerned. Right before Rift Rivals happened, Meteos, the jungler for 100 Thieves, was traded away, and they've acquired Anda, who used to play for FlyQuest and was on the 100 Thieves Academy roster, or on the FlyQuest roster, is now traded to 100 Thieves, and he will be the starter. So instead of the Brandini Levi combo that we saw at Rift Rivals, we'll be expecting someday Anda, Ryu, Cody Sun, and Afromu to be the main pieces to go forward until they figure out how to incorporate Levi into their lineup, whether it's taking out Someday or whether it's taking out Ryu. These are some of the rules that some of you may not be too familiar with, but it's important to know that all teams are only allowed to have 2 imports on the active roster at any time. So these are some of the things that you want to pay attention to. It's sorted out by the coaches, but you want to keep your ears to Twitter. I'm here to update you as much as I can, but it does affect the way we plan around our matchups, because DraftKings is not very well up to date with putting the right players in the slate. And I don't talk about the ones that we were really affected by. For one thing, I'm hearing that DeMonte for Echo Fox will be part of the regular rotation, whether he's splitting time with Phoenix or whether he's taking the position outright. I don't know yet, but I think Echo Fox is good on their Twitter to just alert us as to who is starting. Not all the time, can't be counted on every single day, but I think they do a pretty good job in letting us know who are going to be in the starting roster rotation for that day of the matchup. So keep your ears wide. The other one we want to pay attention to in Echo Fox is the rotation between Feng and Adrian. Leave it up for DraftKings to just not stay up to date with these events, because I don't see Adrian in this slate, but he might play. So that leaves us with very, very little opportunities to play some Echo Fox. The only ones that you can definitely count on are Huni and Dardoch. And lastly, I think looking into this slate, C9 has not announced their official roster, which we have to pay attention to Academy that will be playing on Thursday and Friday to see who are back in the Academy rotation. Nevertheless, DraftKings, I think stupidly decide to leave out Jensen again, and they leave out Sneaky. So we're left with Zazal and Keith, who might not even play on the main stage in LCS, but they are certainly a team that I want to look to be part of my cash gameplay because of their matchup. So those are some of the things that you want to pay attention to as far as roster going forward. Complain to DraftKings as much as you can about how they mismanage the player pool. We can't make the ideal stack, and when players are missing from the pool and when they put in the wrong players in the pool. So I hope you join me in that cause, because if we want to grow this game, we want to make sure to have every option available to us. But in the meantime, you have myself, you have some other people like Mr. Malanger, and John George, all to provide you with just articles and preparation strategies and everything you need to help you be atop of the field, be ahead of people who don't do research. And welcome back a little bit. I want to take this time to just talk a little bit about the Twitter questions that I got. I received 2 this week. I hope you guys send more questions to me. If you want to learn more about this game, I'm more than happy to just kind of talk about different strategies with you. The first questions I got is from a good friend, the elderly. You might be familiar with him because he stands atop of a lot of the GPP boards, and he has a good solid process and a sharp mind. Plays a variety of DFS, so he incorporates strategies and sound theories in League of Legends as well. I have a good time just bouncing ideas with him. when we can get together. His questions to me is who will win Worlds. Well, this year is kind of funny. I don't think Kingzone is going to win, even though they are the heavy favorites. I don't know about RNG. At first, I was thinking RNG probably was the easy answer, but for Worlds, you never really know. Last year, there was higher expectation for other teams, and then we saw a team like Samsung Galaxy win it when I wasn't very thrilled with their style of game, and I wasn't. I was also not very well versed in what a good team might look like, but I'm not sure. I don't think Gen G or Samsung Galaxy, old Samsung Galaxy, will make it back into deep into Worlds. They might make it, but I don't think they're gonna repeat. This year, I think I do like a Freak of Freaks. They may not look very good right now, losing at Rift Rivals when the LCK were relying on them, and also coming back in their first game and losing to Rocks Tigers Hanwha Esports Life. It was not a good look, but this is a very good organization. Their playstyle might not be one of my favorite for DFS purposes, but I think they are sneakily good, and they've been making slow progress, and now they're showing that they actually can dominate in the LCK. And while everyone's excited about the Chinese league, the China LPL China, I have a sneaky feeling that China might falter at Worlds in the big stage again. So my answer is going to be a Freak of Freaks. The second question I get is from Mr. Malmanger. I've mentioned him several times. He is the guy at FSI in the chat where he can discuss all things LCK, LPL related. He is a very, very sharp fellow, and I really enjoy just watching his process. I just wish that he, would be a little bit conservative with his sharing his lineup. I know a lot of people want to learn this game. I just think when he gives his lineup out there, people are just copying it and being able to dominate the room full of the GPP, being dominated by Slack. I'm happy for you guys who are winning. Don't get me wrong. I just think that it's more conducive to your learning if you learn how to develop construct your own line. I know Miller and Josh, those are two other sharp people in that same Slack who have been putting out their own lineups and understanding the theories. And yeah, that's how I want to see the sports grow. So back to his question. His question is, how do I do a cash process? Now my process is fairly new, and I've mentioned it several times that I'm still making tweaks and learning, but I've developed a sort of steps that I follow, which I feel very comfortable with. It's not perfect, but I think it's pushing that to the point where I feel very comfortable in applying it. The first things that I always look for is whether the game is a best of 1, best of 3, or best of 5. That changes the way how I want my roster constructed. In cash games, I want as few supports as possible, unless I know that the supports have a high assist rate. The second stat that I look for is kill participation. Instead of kills, instead of assists, instead of KDA, kill participation actually is a very reliable statistics that will tell you how often and how much a player is involved in the kills, in the team kills, and the higher the number, the better it is for their prospect of producing high floor kind of lineups. And it is a stat that I would rely on to build my cash game. The third thing is Vegas odds. While I don't rely on Vegas odds to tell me which teams to play, because I have a fairly good idea which teams are good and which teams are bad already, it does help me whenever confirm some of my thoughts when I look at the matchups and understanding who might win. But sometimes it can be different, or sometimes it shows a certain number that really makes me take a pause and investigate the matchup more. But in essence, you want teams that win and stack those teams. Stacking is the key to cash games as well as GPP, but in cash games, more so, it sets you up for a high floor and high as well as a good ceiling. You might have to eat the chalk, and you cannot worry about ownership when you play cash games. Whether a lot of people will own the same lineup, that really has not bothered me at all. It would be in the back burner for me if I was building a GPP lineup more so, but for a cash lineup, eat the chalk. Don't worry about being too different from others, and you can actually build a solid GPP lineup from your cash lineup as well. But don't overthink it, and that would be my advice. The third or fourth thing that I use is a model that I'm developing which looks at specific matchups. DFS is a game of numbers, and regardless of how good a team may be on paper or by their reputation, you want the team that puts up numbers. You don't want a team that demolishes their opponents in a short times where they don't have enough time to rack up statistics. You also don't want a team that loses or wins but plays a very conservative defensive style. So I have a model that kind of like looks into the several different aspects of how many kills, how many deaths a team gives up on average, and how that comes together with the matchup. And of course, I always use John George's deaths per losses and kills per win stats to help me make my decision. So hopefully that helps, and stay tuned because now we'll head into the slate breakdown. And welcome back. It's time to go head into and look at the slates. I don't know how clear it is on your screen, but hopefully it's clear enough for you to see where I'm thinking about playing. For the Friday European slate, I am looking at several teams that I feel confident in stacking and confident in playing, and they'll appear on my cheat sheet as well, but I'll provide you with a skeleton key as to the two teams that I'm likely seeing as having a high floor. Though the matchups in this week, the safe matchups are going to be Vitality and perhaps Rocket. G2 and Misfit is a premier matchup, and everyone's looking forward to it. I still think that G2 will come out as the victor, and they are priced as such, but they're not the most expensive ones. This game, I think, is where all the statistics will come in from. So you pick a side, whether it's G2, whether it's Misfit. I think there's a good capacity for GPP play here if you want to go Misfit or if you want to go G2. Just ensure that when you go with either team, you want to stack 4 or 5 players, including team spot with that. But a lot of stats will come from here, and I will likely be on the G2 side. As you'll see it in my cash, I'm on the G2 side, and they fit well with Rockets. But I'm also looking at Shaka 04, though this team is low scoring typically. Giants Gaming is the second team that gives us the most stats to their opponents on average, next to H2K, which are the worst, which the Vitality has played that. And I think if you want to go Vitality, they are priced as the most expensive one, and I'm having a hard time trying to stack them unless I go Vitality Misfit 2, but that I wouldn't consider as much as a cash game, as much as that more of a GPP. But if you want to go that route, I completely understand it. Just know that it's going to be hard to stack more than 4 Vitality members. The other game that I'm likely fading is the Fnatic Splice game. I'm having a good sense of that Splice might be on the upswing, but they also play a slower style. And Fnatic's chalk this up to a gut feeling. I'm not sure what to expect from Fanatics coming back from Rift Rivals. They have an uneven performance, to say the least. But if they win, I think they can still put up a decently good number. So that might be this is not a risk that I need to take with how the slate is sorted by their salaries. So that might be a route you want to go for in GPP, but as of now, my initial thought is to fade the game. Rocket could be another team that you could look at. They have a very closely priced to Unicorns of Love, while I think Vegas thinks this is a coin flip game. I think if Rocket were to win this game, they would put up a good amount of points because of how many points Unicorns of Love have forfeited to their opponents. So that's it for the Friday slate. Let's look at the North American side. Now, as I mentioned before in the first segment, we have a lot of roster substitution to pay attention to. Of note, some of the Echo Fox members are missing, including DeMonte and Adrian. In C9, Jensen and Smoothie are missing, or Sneaky are missing. And those are some of the players that I actually want as part of my stacks when I was stacking the team. Just looking at the lineups here, I think TSM is a safe play. 100 Thieves is working around with a new roster, and they have to figure out team chemistry. I would avoid Mithy as much as I can, but because C9 doesn't have Sneaky in there, I was forced to play Mithy. He's not bad. It's just in the early part of the season, he wasn't a big part of the contributors, even in wins. But in the last two games, it gives me a little bit more optimism that he actually is going to put up a reasonable amount of points in a win. Can 100 Thieves win instead of TSM? Maybe. I mean, 100 Thieves was the second place team in Spring Split, but again, they're bringing in a new player, which they had very little time to form a chemistry with. We've seen at Rift Rivals that adding the two new players, Brandina and Levi, really didn't do 100 Thieves any favor. They're coming back now with maybe just one different player, but it's still it's still going to be an adjustment period for 100 Thieves, and I think TSM will then be a solid play for cash. We have no odds for Echo Fox and CLG game and the C9 FlyQuest game. I think that's because their roster is not going to be announced until the day of, and that's when we'll see odds. So keep following your favorite betting sites to see who they think will win. I think these two games present with a lot of value, but for now, I think if I can pick, I'll pick C9 as my second team to stack with TSM because FlyQuest is very giving. In losses, in wins, FlyQuest continues to be very giving. Missing Jensen in that lineup is really tilting, to be honest. But so I at best maybe you can do is Licorice Svenskeren, Golden Glue, and C9 team. Again, you don't need to pay up for team in a best of one, as I mentioned previously, but it is something that you could do just because they're missing Sneaky and Jensen, who I expect to be playing on the day of. Complain to DK when players are missing from the pool. It's tilting. It is not fun. The other games to look at, Clutch Gaming's against Golden Guardians is another one that, is a viable game, especially if you are going with the Clutch Gaming stack. You must have Apollo and Hakuho in your lineup. You can play Apollo as a one-off. He is been putting output regardless if the team is winning or losing. Clutch Gaming is coming back down a little bit to their older style of playing it slow, playing it more macro style. But for now, there's the stats kind of point to that they're trying out to be a bit more involved in the team fighting aspect and more involved in working early just to adjust to the meta. So Apollo I don't mind as a one-off in any of your build. The game that I'm likely to fade is the TL Optics game. Both teams have been looking as two of the slower paced team on North American LCS. I may be off base with this. Last week I was off base with Schalke game. I thought they were to give up the least amount of points, but it happened to be one of the higher scoring games. But for this, I'm gonna always default back to what I see on the statistics that I've collected, and it shows that when TL can control the game, they would prefer a cerebral type of style, not necessarily a team fighting, snock'em sock'em kind of fight, which is what we need for daily fantasy sports. But they would prefer a very much cerebral style and controlled and sound style, whereas Optics is more of the turtle style, where they play defense. They play not to lose. They play not to lose instead of playing to win, and eventually they'll end up losing anyways because it's too much to overcome. So I expect TL to be choking them out. But if you do feel like the need to play, Double Lift is the only player that I would recommend because of the team funneling style. They will try to boost up Double Lift in gold, in creep score, in kills. Everything will be funnels towards him, so he is a fantastic one-off if you want, except TL is one of the most expensive on the slate across the board. Looking at the Echo Fox and CLG game, it's kind of interesting. If CLG is slated to be the underdogs, which they are priced as, I think they clearly, playing up to their name, counter logic, they might actually pull off the upset. So that's where I would look for GPP. And the other game I would look for GPP is probably, like I mentioned, 100 Thieves upsetting TSM. I don't expect it to happen. It's not likely to happen, but it could. And so that's it for the breakdown for the Friday and Saturday slates. Any questions, hit me up. You can find all my contact information here. And also, I will be updating the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet link will be included in this video, as well as the posted on my Twitter Twitter feed. Follow me and hit me up with any questions that you might have about the slate. Once the pricing comes out for the European Saturday and North American Sunday slates, I will be working on them to incorporate them into my cheat sheet. You'll see it updated and as I go. And if you want to learn the game, go to my YouTube site and I'll learn the basics. I have a set of basic videos where you get to learn my process and understand what I'm looking for and what I need to use to help me develop a winning strategy. So good night, everyone, and hope you are able to dominate this weekend and enjoy the cash flow that comes into you. If I don't win it, I hope some of you will win instead.